Welcome back to another FPL video. Today we're looking to the Game Week 18 team selection. It is quite early, but with such a quick turnaround, and we also want to do the reaction stream and other videos, we're doing the team selection right now, talking about my performance so far in Game Week 17 and looking ahead to Game Week 18 and what my plans are for that game week, as well as future ones too. So if you end up enjoying this video, then be sure to drop it a like. Let's try to get this over 300, and we're also looking to push on towards 20,000 subscribers. We're getting ever closer to that goal, so that'd be very much appreciated. And let's just jump straight into this video. At the time of this recording, there are still 3 more games yet to be played in Game Week 17, which include Chelsea versus Bournemouth, Manchester City against Leeds, and Manchester United against Nottingham Forest. And Kepa Arrizabalaga is currently flagged with an injury doubt, but he was in training the other day. The same goes for Mason Mount. So by the time this video is out and you have watched it, he probably would have been cleared and there will be no yellow flag to worry about. So it's just here because at the time of this recording, he is currently flagged in FPL, but there should be no issues. He's yet to play against Bournemouth. Let's see how Chelsea do. Let's see if Kepa starts, and if he does, he's going to be one of the very best goalkeeper options in my opinion, at least for the next 5 to 10 game weeks. And he's also got another great fixture coming up in Game Week 18, which we'll discuss very soon. Another player that's yet to play includes Luke Shaw, who's obviously going to be at home to Nottingham Forest, and that's another decent chance of a clean sheet, despite all the problems that United have at the back, such as Lisandro Martinez and Varane currently being unavailable, but they should return within the next few days and weeks, and they should have a full-strength backline. Maguire's also a bit of a doubt, and Diogo Dalot, but they're also players that don't have serious issues, I think, and they should also return fairly soon, so no real concerns with Luke Shaw for the time being. And the other one who has played already is Kieran Trippier, and once again he has delivered with a 12-pointer, a clean sheet in a 3-0 victory against Leicester, an assist and 3 bonus points. He is definitely the best defender in the game right now, and that's why the vast majority of us have him in our teams. And then you could even double up on Newcastle defensively. The other one is Joao Cancelo for me, who's going to be playing Leeds, and I've also got the likes of Ben White and Botman on my bench. Botman obviously kept a clean sheet, so that was maybe a bit frustrating, but I'm expecting some good things from Cancelo, despite the fact that Leeds have caused a lot of big problems to the big teams this season, including Arsenal, Spurs, and many others that they've faced so far. I'm usually not a huge fan, but I'm expecting some big things from Rashford over the next few weeks. He had an incredible World Cup coming off the bench and making a real impact, and he also looked really sharp against Burnley in the Carabao Cup, not to mention some top performances this season so far, including against the big teams. And whilst United have some tough fixtures in there, I think Rashford could be one of those that will rise to the occasion and get even better. But let's see how he does against Nottingham Forest first, and also the likes of Martial. And the other midfielder here, another 12-pointer, was from Salah, who went from 3 bonus points to 2, which was maybe a tad frustrating, but you can't really complain too much. He got a goal and an assist. He should have scored another one, and he also created some other chances and looked pretty good in that game as well. Aston Villa were always going to be a bit dodgy at the back, especially with no Emi Martinez in goal, and Liverpool and Villa should have scored even more goals. It was an end-to-end game. There was a lot of chances, and a lot went to waste, including by Mohamed Salah himself, but still a 12-pointer. You can't complain. Another midfielder is Almiron, who had one chance. He took it. A well-taken goal, a great dribble, just directing right into the Leicester defence, and there was no stopping him really. And Leicester once again back to their poor usual self defensively, but Newcastle as solid as ever, and they're currently second in the Premier League table. That is until Manchester City play against Leeds United, but Newcastle have been thoroughly impressive, and that's why I've currently got a triple up in Newcastle, even though they've got no double game week. And you also might argue there are better options in certain positions, but not with Trippier and Almiron. I don't think there are any better defenders or midfielders around that price compared to those two. They've been exceptional. And then the other 2 midfielders include the likes of Gabriel Martinelli, who actually was a bit shaky against West Ham. He was kind of rushing some crosses. He wasn't looking that good, but he had one chance. It was a poor mistake by Fabianski to concede that goal on the near post, but Martinelli still managed to get it to work, and Martinelli is always a nuisance to play against, even when he has a bit of an off game, and he has a decent record against West Ham. I think he's now scored against them on 3 separate occasions, and Martinelli is still for me the best Arsenal midfielder, despite the fact that Odegaard for me was man of the match against West Ham, and he is actually currently the highest scoring midfielder amongst Arsenal players, and he has been absolutely fantastic in the last few games as well. You look at the game against Wolves, Odegaard was the main man. Same against West Ham, he got another double-digit return. And Bukayo Saka, who was involved in all 3 goals, whether he won the ball, scored it himself, or was creating the chances or spaces for other players as well. But I still think Martinelli is the best option. He is the cheapest after all, alongside Odegaard. And for me, Martinelli has the most explosive potential, and he'll score the most goals. Let me know if you're considering a switch to Martin Odegaard from a Bukayo Saka or Martinelli. I think all three of them are exceptional FPL options, and Arsenal have become the first team in the Premier League so far this season to have 4 players scoring 5 goals or more in the Premier League. And I think that would change Manchester City. I think they'll join them. But for Arsenal to be the first, it shows that the goals are shared and there's not one standout individual. They're all contributing, and it's a great team effort at the moment. And the last midfielder, and the only blank so far for me, is Leandro Trossard, who got a 2-pointer in a 3-1 victory for Brighton, and he can be a very frustrating FPL option, and maybe have a few regrets about not going for a 3-4-3 kind of formation, and instead of going for Trossard, going for Andreas, and then investing the money in another striker like a Martial, Nketiah, or Mitrovic. But with all the doubts surrounding Mitrovic, with the yellow card looming over him and a potential suspension, as well as the yellow flag for Gameweek 17, that was enough to put me off, and I think Marco Silva did the same for a lot of FPL managers, unfortunately. But Mitrovic, obviously a 15-pointer for him, and you look at Trossard with a very disappointing performance, but he is going to face Arsenal next, and I think against the bigger teams, Trossard does step it up, and that's where he seems to have a more prominent role, especially in FPL. One thing I don't regret, at least up until this point, is going for a striker as proven, as tried and tested as Harry Kane. He got a 7-pointer. He also hit the crossbar. Otherwise, that would have been a double-digit return for him in the first game back after the penalty miss against France. A great response, and that header that he scored was sensational, really. A great delivery, I think, by Lenglet, but the header, the execution, I mean, it was impossible to save. And Harry Kane is just a goal scorer, and I think he's never blanked on Boxing Day. I think that's 7 or 8 occasions now that he's delivered, and he's now scored against every single team he has faced in the Premier League. Brentford was the last one to tick off, and he'd done that, and Harry Kane for me is one of the very best premium options. He's just so consistent. My only concern with Harry Kane, apart from the annual injury he seems to get, is the suspension. He only needs 1 yellow card more to be suspended, and I'm just hoping it's not the case from an FPL perspective, but let's see what this brings. And he has been fantastic this season. Only Haaland has been more consistent, and speaking of him, he is the next one that I still have yet to play, and most of us would have captained him. He is facing Leeds. I think that could be a bit of a tougher game than we expect, but you'd still predict the Manchester City victory and for Haaland to be involved in and amongst the goals. Erling Haaland was my captain, and maybe I'm a bit frustrated or disappointed I didn't go for something different like Salah, but let's see what Haaland has yet to bring. He could easily beat that 12-pointer, as he has done multiple times this season in just 16, 17 game weeks. If you look at the right-hand corner of your screen, those are my current points and ranks. So 49 points with only 6 players playing, 5 of them returning, only 1 blank in Trossard, 938 points overall, and I've gone from around 1.1 million to just in and amongst the top million in 977,000, which is a decent rank rise so far, and things could still change. I've got plenty of players left. I've got Kepa from the Chelsea game. I've got 2 Manchester United players in Shaw and Rashford, and also 2 Manchester City players in Cancelo and Haaland. But I am a bit concerned about the likes of De Bruyne, Martial, Reece James, and even Mason Mount potentially. I think those players could cause a possible red arrow from the current predicament and position that I'm holding at the moment. But let's talk about the Gameweek 18 team selection, how I'm looking to line up, and my transfer plans. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I would expect the yellow flag for Kepa Arrizabalaga to be wiped out, but what I'm looking at is whether he starts with a Mendy or not, just as he was doing before his injury, and how Chelsea perform against Bournemouth in Gameweek 17 and Nottingham Forest in Gameweek 18 before their double, which does include Manchester City. And a lot of these double game weeks for these clubs do include some tough opposition, and you would expect a low ceiling, at least on paper, but I'm expecting some big things from Kepa at that price point, and if not, I've always got Danny Ward to come off the bench. But if Leicester keep on performing like they did against Newcastle and go back to their poor old ways, then I would be a bit concerned, and I might need to make a goalkeeper transfer sooner than expected. I only have one conundrum at the back line, and I'm going to go for 3 defenders here, starting with Joao Cancelo at home to Everton. I know there's been a lot of uncertainty around him about whether he's worth the price tag or not, but I think he will deliver, and whilst he won't be as consistent or valuable as someone like Trippier, I still think Cancelo will be right up there in terms of points scored, and he will be worth the extra money over the likes of Walker, Akanji, Stones. You just never know when those players are going to be rotated. With Cancelo, more often than not, he will start. He's a bonus points machine, especially especially if Manchester City get a narrow victory, and he also creates a lot of chances. And I know the stats are down from last season, especially in terms of underlying numbers like expected assists, but I would still expect an improvement, and Cancelo should be well motivated after a very poor World Cup by him, where he was actually dropped in the end for Diogo Dalot. So let's see how Joao Cancelo does against Leeds and Everton. Next up is Shaw, but I could replace him in the Game Week 18 team selection with Botman and go for a double up in Newcastle defensively. But once again, I want to see how Man United do first without Lisandro Martinez and Varane, and then I will reevaluate. But with Shaw, it's mainly for the attacking potential, and Wolves got a very late winner against Everton in Julian Lopetegui's first game in charge with Aït-Nouri with a 94th minute winner. Let's see how that game will pan out. But first off, Man United against Nottingham Forest, that's what I'll be watching, and then it's going to be between Shaw and Botman for that final spot, because Trippier is always going to start. There's no doubts about that. I don't think I'll ever bench him at this point, even potentially when he's facing a Manchester City or an Arsenal. Any type of club, I think I'll still play him because he has so many different avenues where he can accumulate some points. There were a lot of questions during the deadline stream about Salah versus De Bruyne. I went for Salah, but I still think it's 50-50, and we are yet to see how De Bruyne does upon his return from the World Cup when he faces Leeds in Game Week 17. And I think with Salah, there is the possibility of a switch from Salah to De Bruyne in Game Week 20 when City have the double. But apart from that, I'm quite happy to keep Salah, and I don't want to get too wrapped up in these double game weeks, which explains a lot of my team selection, and I discussed this in the videos and the deadline stream itself. But I'm expecting some big things from Salah, and if Leicester defend the way they did against Newcastle, I think Salah and other Liverpool forwards like Nunez could get a lot of joy there. So Salah is going to be in here for now. Let's see if a switch to De Bruyne is on the cards. Next up is Trossard against Arsenal, and I think he could actually do even better in this game week despite the difficulty of the opposition compared to how we did against Southampton in Game Week 17, where Brighton scored 3 goals and Trossard wasn't involved at all. So he can be a bit of an FPL troll, and he can be very frustrating, and he will deliver when you least expect him to. I am open-minded to going to another midfielder or switching formations and downgrading Trossard to an Andres Pereira and then upgrading Greenwood to someone like Mitrovic, Martial or Nketiah. But I want to give this a bit of time, see how Trossard does over the next few game weeks, and then reevaluate and assess, and maybe going forwards I'll have different plans to what I just said. Then the other midfielders is where I have more confidence. Rashford away to Wolves, I think that's a decent fixture, but with Lopetegui they could be tough to beat, and Wolves are always an odd team to play against, and even if you do beat them, it could be by the odd goal or two, and you don't see huge FPL returns for the opposition. But Rashford is a decent choice at the moment. He's got the fixtures, he's got the form as well, both on the international stage and also at club level. Let's see if he can continue this into the Premier League and also translate this into FPL points. And then going into the last 2 midfielders, that includes Gabriel Martinelli, who's facing Brighton. That will be a tough test, and it is going to be a bit of a clash, you could say, but both Trossard and Martinelli can haul at the same time. I'm not expecting big things from Martinelli and other Arsenal midfielders. It could be a very cagey game, and it could go either way, to be honest. And Brighton are a really tough test. They're 7th in the Premier League table, and they could cause some huge problems to Arsenal and even get a result. And with Martinelli, I'm actually not that confident of a return there, so he could possibly be benched as well. The other midfielder is Almiron, who I'm not going to bench at all. He's going to be facing Leeds as well, and I'm going to go for a double or potentially a triple up in Newcastle in my starting 11. Like I said, it could be Shaw dropping out, or someone like Botman, or even Gabriel Martinelli. You could argue Trossard is the one to do in terms of dropping to the bench, but I think it'd be between Shaw and Martinelli in my current team selection. The forwards speak for themselves. I'm not going to drop them in any game week. Harry Kane at home to Aston Villa. I would not be surprised if he gets a double-digit return here, especially if Martinez once again fails to make it for this game and continues to celebrate after the World Cup victory. So with Harry Kane, he's in here, and he's actually in my consideration for the captaincy, even more so than Salah, I would argue. But you know, there's not much to separate those two, and it could go between either one of them. But you've also got one certain Norwegian striker in Erling Haaland, who's going to be facing Everton at home, and he's going to be the most popular choice every single game week. So what I might do is go against the grain and potentially back myself with someone like Salah or Kane as my captain. That will be another conundrum for me, because my plan is to roll the transfer, have 2 in game week 19, and potentially get another Chelsea player like Reece James, Mason Mount, or bring in De Bruyne ahead of Game Week 20 in for Mohamed Salah. Those are the 3 players I've got on my watch list, and I want to see how Chelsea and City do in Game Week 17 first before making these conclusions, but I want to give it some time. I like this team going into Game Week 18, and I don't see any real need to change things just yet. My current captain is Erling Haaland, so that will come as no surprise, but I am considering Harry Kane and Salah for the captaincy as well. So I'm going to reevaluate, see how City do against Leeds. If Haaland looks very sharp, then I'll probably stick the armband on him. But otherwise, if I have any doubts about his performance, I might reconsider and go to Kane or Salah to go about things differently, because in the position I'm at, I need to find ways of differentiating myself from the rest, and my squad is fairly template, you could argue. I know most people don't have Harry Kane, but his ownership is 28% anyway, so captaining someone like him could be my differential and my way of clawing back rank. As you can see with my bench, I've got Ward, Botman, White and Greenwood. My consideration is to go for Botman in for Shaw and doubling up on Newcastle defence. That's another kind of differential, you could say, despite Shaw having very low ownership as well. So maybe benching someone like Martinelli, who's owned by 50% of the game. I'm not that confident about returns for him or Arsenal players in general. That could be another way of differentiating myself and also kind of just following what my predictions are going to be. I think that Newcastle will keep a clean sheet against Leeds, and I think Arsenal, or at least Martinelli, might not score against Brighton. So that could be another thing I could do to go against the template. Obviously, it can backfire. That's obviously going to be the downside to it. But like I said, the 2 main things to consider with my team selection is maybe benching Shaw or Martinelli for Botman and captaining Harry Kane or Salah over Erling Haaland. Let me know your thoughts on those 2 scenarios and decisions, and what are you going to be doing ahead of Game Week 18. I think for most of us, it's best to roll. Have 2 free transfers in Game Week 19, especially if you don't have many Chelsea players like myself for the double in Game Week 19. That could be very useful to have those 2 free transfers. But thank you very much for watching. If you end up enjoying this video or finding it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and getting this video to over 300 likes. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also become a patron or a channel member. The link's on the description below. The same goes for the Discord server and the FPL League. So all of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for the rest of the FPL season, and a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and I'll see you next time.